Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another daily dose of Innistrad Midnight Hunt spoilers, and oh my goodness, do we have some sweet stuff to talk about today. We have maybe my favorite and perhaps one of the best cards from the entire set, a ton of other stuff as well, mythics, rares, uncommons, so much spicy stuff, which means we should probably jump right into it. Start talking sweet new Innistrad Midnight Hunt cards. Before we do, two quick reminders. One, if you want to see all the latest previews, you can find them all over at MTGpreviews.com. And number two, if you need some of the cards that we're going to talk about today, or really any cards, you can get them from our sponsor, Card Kingdom. They have Innistrad Midnight Hunt up for pre-order now. You can even get a free MTGGoldfish sticker. Let them know you want one, and they'll hook you up. They're super cool like that. So anyway, with that stuff out of the way, let's talk sweet new Innistrad Midnight Hunt cards. First up today, we got a new Rakdos Vampire Legend, Florian Voldaren Saya. So 3 mana 3/3 first strike. At the beginning of your post-combat main phase, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the total amount of life your opponents lost this turn. Exile one of those cards, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order, and you can play the exiled card. So essentially, a 3 mana 3/3 first strike that as long as you damage your opponent before your post-combat main phase, you get to, at worst, draw a card, and at best, sort of like tutor through your deck to find the right card for the situation. I actually think this card is pretty strong. 3/3 first strike for 3, reasonable stats. It's kind of Goblin Chain Whirler, and Goblin Chain Whirler was really good and has a triple red mana cost. Florian, a lot easier to cast, even though it's 2 colors. I don't know if the ability is as powerful. Is wiping out small creatures more or less powerful than drawing an extra card, hopefully each turn, as long as you're being aggressive and damaging your opponent? I mean, drawing a card might actually be better. So I think, just based on stats and abilities, Florian seems like a playable standard card. As far as its ability, we've seen a few different legends with this post-combat main phase thing. Timana is probably the first of the bunch. Timana, though, it lets you draw cards equal to the number of opponents that you dealt damage to. So Florian is only ever going to draw you a card. In Commander, Timana can be drawing you 3 cards if you hit each of your opponents. Although Florian is going to hopefully draw you the right card. If you can deal a bunch of damage to your opponents and have them lose a lot of life, then you're being able to essentially tutor like 10 cards deep to find something really, really good. We also got like Bellamy, Nehab. Nehab works really well with Florian. That's probably my favorite synergy. Nehab, at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, gives you red mana for each life your opponent's lost. So if you have them both going, Nehab's going to give you a ton of mana, and Florian's going to let you tutor through your deck to find cards to play with that mana. So in Commander, this works really well with anything that can damage the table. Heartless Hidasugu, Exsanguinates, even Flame Rift. Like, Flame Rift is 2 mana, 4 damage to each player. That means your opponents are going to take a total of 12 damage, which means you get to go 12 cards deep with your Florian to snag whatever your best possible card is. Same with Exsanguinate, same with Heartless Hidasugu. Like, you can turn this into a pseudo tutor almost. Sure, you gotta cast a card this turn, but that's fine. And this even opens up some combo potential. I think one of the cutest ways to take advantage of this is with extra combat phase cards. So something like Relentless Assault, it gives you an extra combat phase, and that allows you to attack and maybe deal more damage, which is nice. But what it also does is give you an extra post-combat main phase, which means you get to tutor again with Florian. So I'm imagining like Florian, tutor up a Seize the Day, get an extra combat phase, and then the extra main phase, which allows you to tutor again with Florian to get an Aggravated Assault or Relentless Assault, and then you go back to combat again, then you go back to your main phase, and you get to tutor again. If you're getting in damage each of those combats, it's also snowballing how far you can tutor into your deck until eventually you're going to be tutoring like 50 cards deep and basically be guaranteed to hit what you need. And then the final piece of the puzzle is tutoring up the Nehab. If you tutor up the Nehab, that's going to give you the mana to keep taking extra combats and keep tutoring with Florian. So I think that you can parlay this into a victory, essentially. As far as standard is concerned, obviously a vampire card. It is a vampire, so if vampire tribal is a thing, I think Florian definitely going to be part of it. Like, we talked about it before, the stats are good. 3/3 first First Strike, that's a legit creature. Drawing an extra card each turn, assuming you can get in some amount of damage to your opponent, that's good. In Standard, it's not really about tutoring, 20 cards deep. Your opponent would be dead if you were tutoring 20 cards deep, most likely. It's about getting in enough damage that you can draw a card. Right now, there's not a ton of reasons to be vampires. There's like Vampire Socialite, but remember, we're heading into a Innistrad set that is about vampires, theoretically, in Innistrad Crimson Vow in a couple of months. So even if full-on Vampire Tribal doesn't get there yet, it seems like there's a good chance there'll be a vampire deck in November once we get the second Innistrad set. Plus, this is just a good card. We've seen creatures that allow you to draw an extra card each turn, like Ragavan and Robber of the Rich, be very strong, and I feel like Florian can kind of do the same thing. It's a little slower, although it has the upside of drawing from your deck rather than your opponent's deck, and potentially some card selection as well. One of the downsides, like Robber of the Rich, Ragavan, is even though it's generating card advantage, because your opponent's deck might not synergize with your deck, who knows how good the card is actually going to be. As far as helping you progress your game plan, we've also seen like Outpost Sieges or Chandra's plus abilities be strong, and Florian kind of does the same thing. Sure, you gotta be getting in at least some amount of damage, but it seems like in an aggro deck, in a vampire deck, this should essentially be draw an extra card each turn in your post-combat main phase, and maybe even do a little bit of tutoring to find a good card, and that is incredibly powerful. Could also show up in just like a Rakdos deck. We've seen Rakdos mid-range with some like sacrifice synergies show up in Standard 2022 with Cavalier and Skullport Merchants and Goldspan Dragons. Florian seems right at home there, so even if vampires are not at a place to really be top tier in Standard yet, that doesn't mean Florian's not good. Just play it in Rakdos aggro, play it in Mardu midrange, whatever. The effect is really powerful in any sort of aggressive deck that's consistently going to be getting a damage at your opponent, so I like Florian. It seems like a fun build around Commander. It seems like a cool addition to the 99 of various vampire decks where drawing cards pretty powerful. Plus in Standard, it's just got good stats and good abilities. Drawing an extra card each turn on a 3/3 first strike body for 3 is really powerful, so if vampires is a thing, this is going to be part of the reason why. And if vampires aren't a thing, I think Florian's good enough to just be a Rakdos aggro style card. We also got another new legend, Dennick Pious Apprentice / Dennick Pious Apparition. So this is a 2-mana Azorius legend. You get a 2-mana 2/3 with lifelink. It's a human soldier. It says cards in graveyards can't be targets of spells or abilities, and then it has Disturb of 4, so once it's in the graveyard, you can cast it transformed as Dennick Pious Apparition for 4 mana, and you get a 3/2 flying with whenever one or more creature cards is put into your graveyard from anywhere, investigate. The ability only triggers once each turn, and then if it would die, it gets exiled. So essentially, Dennick is a pretty interesting 2-drop for a couple of different places. In Standard, it's got a Ground Seal ability combined with almost Gifted Etherboard. You lose the Death Touch, but a 2-drop that's a 2/3 with lifelink, it's a pretty good roadblock against aggro, so the front side body is fine. The Ground Seal ability of stopping cards in graveyards from being targeted might seem weird, but I think the idea is you play this in a dedicated Disturb deck. Disturb wants you to be getting your Disturb cards in the graveyard so you can cast them transformed. The problem is there's a lot of cards in Standard, Sun Gold Sentinels and Graveyard Trespassers and Image Storm Predators, that can just snipe those cards out of your graveyard. And these are all like cards that are pretty playable just on rate. They're just good cards that happen to, when they enter the battlefield, when they attack, exile cards from the graveyard. So if you are going to try to build straight up Disturb Tribal, I feel like Dennick is probably going to be a necessary piece of the puzzle. Like, it's a good card on its own, plus it's going to help you keep your other Disturb cards in the graveyard, and then eventually you get to flip it around into Dennick Pious Apparition, which is a way to generate card advantage. It does have the trigger only once per turn clause, so you can't really combo off with this, but still, if you can get a creature in your graveyard on your turn and your opponent's turn, it can be giving you 2 clues a turn, plus it's a 3/2 flyer, which is not a horrible amount of stats. Like, that's a pretty reasonable body, and we do have a bunch of ways to potentially get creatures into our graveyard. Remember, this says from anywhere, so sure, you can have creatures die in combat or whatever, but you can also cast a Consider and like surveil a creature into your graveyard, or use Warlock class's 2nd level to get cards in your graveyard, or Devoted Graphkeeper milling cards into your graveyard. So no matter what way you get them in there, you're going to be able to investigate and get a clue, and the instant speed ones like Consider are some of the easiest ways to power this up, because if you can get a clue on your turn and your opponent's turn for free, essentially, that's a lot of card advantage Dennick is generating. Plus, there are creatures that can sacrifice sacrifice themselves, or other things which are probably worth considering, like Merfolk Windrobber, Linvala to protect your stuff, Flesh Taker can sacrifice anything, so maybe there's some sort of Azorius sacrifice deck or Esper sacrifice deck that could take advantage of Dennick. As far as Commander is concerned, I feel like this is a much fairer clue commander than Lannis. Lannis is a really sweet clue commander. Like, it investigates a lot. It doesn't have the once per turn restriction. So while I don't think that Dennick is as strong as Lannis as a clue commander overall, it is in a different color combination, which is interesting because there are some good clue cards like Thorough Investigation, Thraben Inspector that are in white that you can't really play with Lannis. So that is interesting. As far as building around Dennick and Commander, I think the easiest way to do it is build it kind of like you would build Sephris. Sephris also has the once per turn, also cares about creatures being put in your graveyard from anywhere. Obviously, the payoff's a little bit different. Rather than getting clue tokens, you're getting, venturing through dungeons and eventually reanimating something. But you can build around them the same way, with maybe the sweetest and most interesting way to take advantage of Dennick is cycling. If you play a cycling deck, blue and white is a really good color for cycling. You get all the Astral Slides and Escape Protocols and Drake Havens. A lot of the cycling payoffs are in blue and white, so you can do like Panharmonicon, Blink, ETB shenanigans. And then the easiest way to make sure you're getting a clue each turn, which in a commander game is going to be 4 clues a turn cycle, is just to cycle something. A Drannith Healer, a Valiant Rescuer, whatever, that's getting the creature in your graveyard, also potentially doing shenanigans with your cycling payoffs. So I think this is a sneaky, powerful cycling commander for an Azorius deck. So I really like Dennick. I mean, it's a 2/3 for 2 with lifelink, so good starting point. It's got a pretty relevant ability if you're a Disturb style deck or trying to play flashback cards to get around graveyard hate, and then if you flip it around, it's a good source of card advantage. One thing I've noticed with this set is there are a lot of 2/3s, which I think is worth keeping in mind for Limited. In Limited, I think that Grizzly Bears are going to be pretty bad this set. It seems like an infinite number of 2/3s for 2. So I think you're going to want to focus on 3 powered creatures to get through your opponent's 2/3s. So that's my limited advice. I know I'm not a big limited player, but that's just something I've noticed looking at this set. 2/3s for days, 2/2s probably going to be bad. Things that can get through 2/3s are going to be pretty powerful. So that's Dennick, sweet standard card for a Disturb deck and just a reasonable body, and potentially a sweet cycling commander. Next up, we have one of my favorite cards from the set, and maybe one of the best cards from the set. This card is really insane. The Meathook Massacre. So double black and X, legendary enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, each creature gets -X until end of turn. When a creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life. When a creature an opponent controls dies, you gain a life. This is essentially Black Sun Zenith combined with Bastion of Remembrance at a discount. You're getting the Bastion of Remembrance effect. Well, pseudo, like it's slightly different. You don't gain a life when your creatures die. You just make your opponent lose life. When they have the creature die, you don't actually drain your opponent. You just gain life, but still very close to a Bastion of Remembrance for 2 mana attached to a Black Sun Zenith that can sweep away the board. This card is absolutely bonkers. It's a Wrath with upside. Sure, it's expensive. It's going to take a lot of mana to sweep the whole board, but it's also flexible. Plus, worst case, you can run it out as a Blood Artist type effect for 2 mana. This card seems absolutely bonkers to me. We have sacrifice-based decks in Standard. We have Eye Twitches and Pest Summonings. We got all these Decay Zombies we're trying to figure out what to do with, and one of the questions has been, where's our Blood Artist? How are we going to have a payoff for all of these things dying? Well, the Meathook Massacre is the payoff. This is the replacement for Bastion of Remembrance. This is the Blood Artist in Standard. So if you want to try to make a bunch of stuff and sack a bunch of stuff and drain your opponent out of the game, this is the way to do it. Downside is it is legendary, which is mostly a drawback. It means we can't stack up multiples of these, but still, even with that in mind, this is an incredibly powerful Magic the Gathering card. So I think sacrifice decks gonna take advantage of this as a way to have a payoff for sacrificing things, the Blood Artist style effect. I could see this showing up in like mid-range style decks. The upside in mid-range, let's say you play Grixis Dragons and your threats are Galazeth and Goldspan Dragon, you can control the X on this in a way where you wipe out all of your aggro opponents stuff, all the goblins, all the white weenie threats, but you actually don't kill your threats, turning this into a Plague Wind style effect. So there's a lot of value in that flexibility. The other thing is, we have white wraths in the format, but we don't actually have a good black wrath in the format. This opens up other possibilities of control decks. One of the most popular colors of control in Standard 2022 is blue-black control, but it really doesn't have a great sweeper. It's got like Shadow's Verdict, which is okay, but this basically does what Shadow's Verdict does and then some most of the time. So this opens up the possibility of non-white control decks having a sweeper. Maybe you want to be Rakdos control. Maybe you want to be Dimir control. The Meathook Massacre gives you a wrath to take advantage of it. It's also got potential in older formats where in like Historic, it seems like a natural fit for the Vesper Lark combo decks, giving you an upgraded Bastion of Remembrance that also sweeps away all your opponent's goblins or elves or whatever. Also probably has potential in like the Jund Sacrifice decks in Historic with Korvald, where you want these effects on the battlefield anyway, and this gives you a sweeper. Also, as a legendary enchantment that only costs 2 mana, it works with Lurrus. You can potentially loop this from your graveyard. Play one, get the sweeper effect out of it, play another one, legend rule it, get one in the graveyard, then Lurrus, cast another one later in the game, so there's shenanigans there as well. In Commander, I think this card is an all-star. I think if you're playing a sacrifice-based deck, Tisa Karlov, Yawgmoth, Korvald, something like that, an aristocrat deck, Meathook Massacre is your go-to wrath. Gonna be one of the best wraths in your deck. You still want Toxic Deluge, maybe a Damnation, but it's certainly good enough to be in the conversation because not only does it give you that sweeper effect, but it also supports your primary game plan by being another Blood Artist style effect, and it might even be good enough just to play as a generic black wrath. So I love this card. The flavor of it is super Innistrad and creepy and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The power level is super high, but not in an oppressive style way. The card is just spectacular. One of my favorite cards from the entire set. We also got a new Mythic Phoenix in Sunstreak Phoenix. So Sunstreak Phoenix, 4 mana 4/2 with flying. It's a Phoenix. If it's neither day nor night, then it becomes day when it enters the battlefield. And when day becomes night or night becomes day, you can pay 2 and return Sunstreak Phoenix from your graveyard to the battlefield tap. So just how good this card is, I'm not sure. So on one hand, it is a 4/2 flyer, which is an aggressive stat line. It's not super resilient, but the resiliency comes from potentially coming back from the graveyard. It reminds me a little bit of Even Death Dracolich, kind of. This 4 mana, high power, low toughness flyer that can come back from the graveyard. The problem is, Even Death, it can come back from a creature dying, and it also has flash, so you can do it on your opponent's turn. Sunstreak Phoenix needs day to become night or night to become day, and the question is going to be how easy is that to pull off? If there is a good day-night deck, then I think Sunstreak Phoenix can certainly be part of it. Even at 2 mana to come back from the graveyard, the resilient, high-power, evasive threat is exactly what you'd want in a deck like that. It doesn't really work specifically with werewolves, so if you're trying to build like werewolf tribal, do you want Sunstreak Phoenix? You're a deck that can turn day to night and night to day. Maybe it could be like a sideboard option for removal heavy matchups, but werewolves is a tribe that can most easily flip back and forth. However, there's not a lot of reasons to specifically be werewolves. Outside of Torvald, there's not a ton of cards that are like, oh, play a ton of werewolves. There are cards that want you to play a lot of daybound and nightbound together though, because flipping it back and forth is so powerful. So maybe the big werewolf quote unquote deck in Standard isn't actually werewolf tribal, it's just good daybound nightbound stuff. In that case, Sunstreak Phoenix is certainly in the conversation for the deck. We even have the Celestis, which is a card that doesn't seem exciting for Standard. Like 3 mana rocks don't usually get there, but if you're also consistently being able to get back Sunstreak Phoenix, that is pretty powerful. 3 mana, switch day to night or night to day, and 2 more mana to get back your Sunstreak. Do that again and again and again. Unfortunately, it does come into play tapped, which is the other concern. The best recursive Phoenixes that we've had in Magic's history are actually the opposite of Sunstreak. Sunstreak comes back into play tapped. The best ones come back with haste. Arclight Phoenix, Phoenix of Ash, Chandra's Phoenix. And while Sunstreak Phoenix does have more power than those, it is very slow. You get it back, it can't block the first turn. The next turn is going to untap. You can try to attack with it. If it dies, then you repeat the process. So it is a very slow Phoenix. The other thing is, it does cost 2 mana to get back, and that wasn't a deal breaker for like Phoenix of Ash, but the most powerful Phoenixes also tend to come back from the graveyard for free, like Arclight Phoenix, Chandra's Phoenix. Although, if Sunstreak just came back for free whenever you switch day to night or night to day, it would probably be too busted with the Celestis and other shenanigans. So we'll have to wait and see. There's things to like about this card. high power, recursive, hard to deal with permanently. There's also things to not really like about the card, which is coming into play tapped, not having haste, needing day and night in specific, which is kind of a high hurdle to jump through. Like, unless you're playing a daybound, nightbound deck, this is a pretty underpowered card. There's also a lot of incidental graveyard hate in our standard, so I think there's a chance this card's playable, but I also don't think this is the next Arclight Phoenix or something that we're gonna see showing up in older formats and being like the next big thing in modern or historic or something. We also got another Wrath. The Wraths just keep flowing today. Burn down the house, 5 mana red sorcery, choose one, 5 damage to each creature and each planeswalker, or make 3 1/1 red devil creature tokens with when they die, 1 damage to any target, and they gain haste until end of turn. This card actually seems really good. We've seen Hour of Devastation be playable and very strong in standard not that long ago. So we know 5 mana for 5 damage to all creatures and planeswalkers is a standard playable effect. And then you get this really interesting upside. One of the problems with Wraths are, if you play them, some matchups they do nothing. If you play Hour of Devastation and you run into a control deck, it's not really going to do all that much. Burn Down the House gives you this flexibility where you run into the control deck. In worst case, you make a couple of devils and you get something between Dance with the Devils and Devil's Playground. I mean, honestly, those 3 devils that ping when they die and haste, that's probably worth 5 mana anyway, based on past devil production cards that we've seen. So really, both sides are pretty fairly costed. There's not really attacks on either side, and the fact that this is never going to be a dead card. If you need to sweep the board, great, sweep the board. If you don't need to sweep the board and you got a bunch of creatures or it's the wrong matchup, then you make some devils, which are pretty reasonable and can close out the game, especially if your opponent's low on life. They can't really block them because if they die, then you ping your opponent to death. It seems very powerful and similar to what we talked about with the Meathook Massacre. This opens up different options for playing sweepers. We got the white sweeper in Doomscar. We got the Meathook Massacre in black. This gives red an option, which was kind of lacking in the format before. So maybe we'll see some sort of like Coma Ramp style deck, Teamer Ramp be a thing, or maybe another style of Goldspan Dragon deck, some sort of control deck, mono red Dragon control or something. I mean, having access to a Wrath seems like the kind of thing that could make these non-white, non-black controller mid-range style decks playable. So I really like this card. The flexibility is huge. It's costed fairly on both sides. Expect to see a decent amount of play in standard. Next up, we got an interesting green sorcery in Sneak into the Festival. So 6 mana green sorcery, flashback of 10, triple green both times, says look at the top 5 cards of your library, put up to 2 permanent cards with mana value 5 or less from among them on the battlefield, the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So this is kind of a collected company. I've heard some people call it Slowco because it's expensive and sorcery speed, but it does do something similar. If you think about collected company, you get 2 creatures, mana value 3 or less for 4 mana. So potentially you're getting 6 mana value for 4 mana value. Sneak into the Festival, if you hit 2 5-drops, you're getting 10 mana value for 6 mana value. Although being a sorcery is a pretty big drawback, and you only get to go 5 cards deep, so you're more likely to whiff or have to get something that you don't really want. Another comparison would be See the Unwritten. See the Unwritten let you go 8 cards deep for a creature card, any creature card, no mana value restriction, or if you have Ferocious, so a creature with 4 or greater power, you get to grab 2 cards from your top 8. Compared to that, Sneak into the Festival, if your goal is to cheat creatures into play, looks kind of bad. Like, it's definitely worse than Collected Company in a lot of decks. I think it's worse than See the Unwritten, but still, like we said, you can be getting 10 mana value worth of creatures for 6 mana, and you have the upside of flashing it back. Flashing it back, not as efficient, but you're getting value out of your graveyard, so that's some card advantage. But I imagine you cast this for 6 mana and hit a Battle Mammoth and a Froghemoth or something, and that's actually like pretty reasonable. That's a lot of scary power going on the battlefield. Although the most exciting part of this card for me is the fact that it hits any permanent. That means this can be getting Ren and Sevens and Lulz. It can be getting the deck of many things. It can get Lulthinus Skeletal Swarming. So that's a huge, huge upside compared to Collected Company or the other versions. So that's worth keeping in mind. I think that's where this home is, especially, I think that's where this card's power is going to be. If you just want to get creatures, there's, not in standard, but there's a lot of other ways in formats like Commander or Historic or Modern that you can put creatures on the battlefield. But if you're trying to get non-creature permanents, Sneak into the Festival is pretty interesting. It does look pretty bad compared to Genesis Ultimatum. Like, which is a good thing. I'm sick of the ultimatums. I'm glad we don't have to deal with cards at that power level anymore. But Genesis Ultimatum, I mean, you go 5 cards deep and you just put them all into play. This is 1 less mana and many less colors, to be fair, but you're getting 2 cards and there's the mana value restriction. I think the question in Standard is this better than just some of the other things you can do at 6 mana? Like, is it better to just cast a Vorinclex, or an Ancient Green Warden, or a Professor Onyx, or a Body of Research, or a Morden Kanan? Or is it worth spinning with your Sneak into the Festival? I honestly think the dream scenario is going to be a little hard to achieve with this card, because to maximize its power, you're going to want to hit 5 mana value cards. But I don't think it's possible to play enough 5 mana value cards in your deck where you're going to hit 2 of them consistently, or else your curve's going to be really horrible in the early game. So I think more often than not, you're probably going to get a pretty good card, like a 4 and a 5, and maybe a cheaper card, or worst case, end up with a land on the battlefield. I guess it could be 6 mana, put 2 lands into play is probably the floor, which isn't especially exciting. So we'll have to see. I don't think this card is especially good compared to other options, but it is a neat twist that it can grab permanents, and if it does have a home in Standard, that's probably going to be why. And Commander, there's a ton of cards that do something very similar, and it's really hard for me to see why I would play this over the other options. So I don't know, probably going to end up being a more or less unplayed bulk rare, but the ceiling is really high. If you get 2 5s, it can be pretty busted, and if you get 2 5s that are like Planeswalkers or something, imagine putting a Teferi and a Nissa into play in a format like Historic. It's probably just going to win you the game on the spot, and that's something that other similar cards can't really do. We also got a new removal spell, Bloodline Eradication. So 3 mana instant, choose 1, target creature gets -5/-5, or creature tokens get -2/-2. So Bloodline Eradication, it's a nice flexible card. A 3 mana instant to give something -5/-5 is fine. And then you're buying the upside where if you do run into a token deck, you kind of have a Token Wrath built in for free as a bonus. So how good is this card actually going to be in Standard? Well, the good news is -5/-5 does kill a lot of things. The bad news is 3 mana is not super duper efficient for giving -5/-5. I think the real question is, how good are tokens going to be? If the second mode, the Token Wrath mode, is something that's coming up somewhat often, then I think this actually could beat out the other options, because I could imagine there being scenarios where someone's going off with Poppet Stitch or Ghoulcaller's Harvest, and your targeted removal is looking pretty bad. Like, killing a token with this is absolutely horrible, and the same is true of other targeted removal spells. So there is an upside. How much of an upside depends on how many token decks are running around. How many Blot Out the Skies are there? How many Battle for Bertigar decks? How many Azeka's Chariots? If the number is relatively high, then I think this is in the conversation as a main deck removal spell, or at worst, maybe a sideboard removal spell for the token matchup. On the other hand, if your goal is just killing a thing, it's not super good compared to the other options. Like Infernal Grasp, that's going to be removal spell, I think, S tier in Standard. It's just so good. Killing anything for 2 mana, losing 2 life, sure, whatever. That card is so strong. That essentially kills everything Bloodline Eradication does, and then some. We got Poison the Cup, which is probably in line to see more play. Soul Shatter has proven its worth as a way to get rid of Goldspan Dragons. So just the first mode of 3 mana give something -5/-5 isn't super great for Standard. So I think this is a wait and see card. I'm really glad this card exists. The first mode is close enough to being playable that if tokens become a big thing in Standard, this is certainly a main deckable removal spell. Probably goes up even further in value in Best of One, that values the flexibility even more. You kind of get a sideboard card in your main deck. On the other hand, if we don't really see tokens take off, if no one's playing Decay, if no one's playing dedicated token decks, then I think you probably just play another option and either leave this in the sideboard or leave this in the sidelines altogether. We also got one of my favorite designs from the set, Slaughter Specialist. So a 3 mana 3/3 vampire warrior. When it enters a battlefield, each opponent gets a 1/1 human token, and then when a creature an opponent controls dies, you put a +1/+1 counter on Slaughter Specialist. So this card seems really good to me. A 2 mana 3/3 is pretty legitimate. The human token is a downside, but really you can just kill the human token. It's a 1/1. You got a 3/3. It's either going to trade in combat, or you can even kill it with a removal removal spell, and the fact that this grows when the human dies could make it an upside. Like, if you can just immediately and easily kill it, then you're getting kind of a 4/4 and your opponent gets nothing, plus it grows when any creature of your opponent's dies, which makes it relatively scary. Like, I could see this card legitimately going off. We have sacrifice decks in Standard. We have, like, Sedgemoor Witch Pest Token sacrifice decks. We have Eye Twitch sacrifice decks. Jadar is another new sacrifice card. So there's a lot of powerful sacrifice stuff, along with just being a weird but on curve 2-drop. Slaughter Specialist is kind of a hoser against these decks. If your opponent's plan is to like make a bunch of pests and then plumb the forbidden them away to draw a ton of cards, Slaughter Specialist is going to get absolutely massive, like super quickly. So I think that's a really neat design. We've seen mono black aggro be a thing in Standard 2022, and we've seen like Bloodsky Berserker showing up there. I have to imagine the Slaughter Specialist is just way better than Bloodsky Berserker. It might not beat out Skyclave Shade, but I think there's enough room in the 2-drop slot of black aggro that I would just play this as a generically good card. Sure, it's a little awkward that I give the opponent a chump blocker for a turn. Maybe that's a drawback, but I think the upside of this growing throughout the game is huge. Plus, we've been talking about throughout the day and throughout spoiler season, the possibility of vampires being a thing, and whether or not they're a thing immediately, that remains to be seen. We'll have to wait and see. Do we gotta wait until we get Crimson Vow? I don't really know, but this is certainly one of the best 2-drops you can play in your standard vampire deck, and it can even show up in like historic vampires. We just got Cordial Vampire in historic, and Cordial Vampire grows your entire team of vampires whenever a creature dies. Slaughter Specialist kind of cares about the same thing, so you give your opponent a 1/1, then you kill that, and then Cordial Vampire is going to put a counter on your entire team, and Slaughter Specialist is also going to get an extra counter from itself. So I could see that working in historic vampires. Once you get past historic, then it gets a little bit more questionable, but who knows? 3/3 for 2 is legit stats on a black creature, even with this weird twist and drawback. So it might be easy to just write this card off because of the drawback of giving your opponent a 1/1, but when you add it all together, I actually think this is a sneaky powerful card that has potential in Standard and maybe in some older formats too. We also got a new green 1-drop in Willow Geist. So 1 mana 1/1 Treefolk Spirit with Trample. When one or more cards leave your graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and when it dies, you gain life equal to its power. So Willow Geist, I think this is actually a pretty powerful effect. I want to mention how its ability works because I've seen some confusion over this. The way it's worded, when one or more cards leave your graveyard, you put a counter on it. So this means, let's say you have Willow Geist down and you Gurmag Angler and you exile 6 cards to delve, you're getting a single counter. On the other hand, if you have things repeatedly going in and out of your graveyard, maybe prized amalgams, which all come back into play individually, Bloodghasts or Grave Crawlers with the Carrion Feeder out, you're going to be getting a lot of counters repeatedly. So you want single things that come in and out of the graveyard frequently, rather than single cards that take a lot of cards out of your graveyard, because you're only getting one counter either way. I think in Standard, it's kind of an interesting option for some sort of aggro deck. We have Stonebinder's Familiar, which is a little similar. Whenever a card goes into exile, you get a counter on it only once each turn. I could imagine there being some sort of like flashback style deck that could take advantage of both of these together, because when you flashback whatever, Join the Dance or Ghoulcaller's Harvest or Can't Stay Away, it is leaving your graveyard, and then when it resolves, it's going to exile, so then you're growing both of your 1-drops. It seems like you could get off to some really explosive starts. Also seems good with Disturb shenanigans, Devoted Graph Creeper, Dennick, things like that, where these are going to be coming into play from your graveyard, so leaving the graveyard, putting a counter on your Willow Geist. The other option is to play cards that exile stuff from your graveyard. You got Graveyard Trespasser, Sun Gold Sentinel. These are incidental graveyard hate attached to already on-curve creatures, and you can play them and attack with them and exile cards from your graveyard to grow your Willow Geist. So maybe there's some sort of like Willow Geist aggro deck available in Standard. Once you get to older formats, it becomes less clear. There's more shenanigans, like Scavenging Ooze really good at repeatedly removing things from your graveyard, Wrenn and 6 putting lands from your graveyard to your hand every turn. So there's lots of ways to grow Willow Geist, but at the same time, it's only a 1 mana 1/1 to start, and in like Modern, you have 1 mana 3/3s that you can get pretty easily, or Death Shadow style effects that are 1 mana 9/9s pretty early in the game. So it's going to take a lot of growing for this to be on curve, but there are shenanigans to make it happen. So I actually really like this design. It's a cool 1-drop. How good it's going to be remains to be seen. You can't just play this in a generic deck and get value out of it, but if you're willing to build around it a bit, it can be a really powerful one drop that gets really big throughout the game. We also got some new blue card draw, Memory Deluge. So 4 mana instant. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast this spell. Put 2 in your hand, the rest in the bottom in any order, and you can flash it back for 7. So I know it's worded a little bit weirdly. Look at the top X cards where X is the amount of mana spent to cast it. Essentially, that allows it to upgrade with the flashback. So you cast it from your hand for 4 mana, you go 4 cards deep, grab 2, and then you flash it back later for 7 mana, you go 7 cards deep and grab 2. This is kind of Behold the Multiverse, sort of upgraded. Like, going 4 cards deep and taking 2 is better than scrying 2 and then drawing 2. You get to see more cards, so it is more powerful. The upside of Behold the Multiverse is you can foretell it and cast it for 2 later, which is really powerful. And then if you flash it back, it's essentially a dig through time. You're basically getting a dig through time. Although dig through time, of course, has delve, so you can cast it out on the cheap. 7 mana is a lot, but still, 2 cards is not a bad deal out of your top 7, especially at instant speed. I think it's kind of hilarious how this works with spell taxing effects. Like, if you have a Thalia out, or your opponent has a Thalia out, it's going to take 1 more mana to cast your Memory Deluge, which is a downside, but at the same time, because you're spending more mana to cast it, you get to look at more cards, which is kind of funny. On the other hand, it doesn't work with things like Torrential Gearhulk or other things that allow you to cast it for free. If you Torrential Gearhulk Memory Deluge into play, you spend 0 mana on it, so you get to look at the top 0 cards of your library, which obviously isn't going to help you put cards in your hand. So there's upsides and downsides to how it's worded. I love that it's an instant. I think that's the biggest deal with this card. If this card is going to see play in Standard or in any format, the reason why is going to be because you can leave it up, leave your counter spells up, leave your instant speed removal spells up. If you need to deal with your opponent's stuff, you can. If you don't need to deal with your opponent's stuff, well, then you Memory Deluge and go digging for something better. The big question in Standard is, how does this compare to Behold the Multiverse? And as we talked about earlier, Memory Deluge is more powerful. Look at 4, grab 2 is better than look at 2, scry, and then draw 2. But Behold the Multiverse does have that foretell upside. I am really not sure. I lean towards Memory Deluge probably being better because of the flashback ability, especially if you're in a control deck. It seems like there's a reasonable chance the game actually goes long enough for you to flash this back for 7 mana. And in the late game, when you're in top deck battles, drawing 2 extra cards out of your top 7 is probably going to win you the game. That's going to find you the wrath you need, the removal you need, the finisher you need to close out the game. So I'm going to say this is better than Behold the Multiverse, but I actually think it's pretty close because the play pattern of being able to foretell for 2 and then flip up Behold for 2 later in the game is powerful. So Memory Deluge, if you like to play control decks and you like to leave up your mana, really powerful option for card advantage, especially thanks to that flashback ability. We also got Angelfire Ignition, a 3 mana Boros sorcery. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. It gains Vigilance, Trample, Lifelink, Indestructible, Haste until end of turn. Flash it back for 4 mana. And this card, the problem is it's a sorcery, and I feel like that's going to keep it from really being playable anywhere outside of limited. So sure, it gives Indestructible, which is really nice. The problem is it's really easy to get blown out with this on the stack. There's lots of instant speed removal, Frostbites and Infernal Grasp and Spectral Adversary. In general, sorcery speed pump spells just aren't enough for Constructed because it's so easy for you to spend 3 mana and try to do this cool thing to your creature and your opponent's like, haha, kill it, and then you get nothing and you kind of skipped your turn, and I don't think flashback is enough to save it. So I don't know, maybe some sort of weird Odric Boros Humans deck in Commander or something could take advantage of it, something that specifically cares about all these keywords. But as far as Construct is concerned and Standard is concerned, I don't think the card's very good, although I do think it can be a massive blowout in Limited and potentially just swing a game in your favor. So sweet Limited card. If you're playing some sort of keyword soup Commander deck that happens to be in the Boros colors, maybe I would consider it there, but being a sorcery means it's just not really designed for Standard, I don't don't think. As far as lower rarity cards, we got some interesting ones. Rite of Oblivion, 2-mana Orzhov sorcery, is an additional cost to cast it. Second non-land permanent, exile target non-land permanent, and you can flash it back for 4. So this reminds me a little bit of a Assassin's Trophy. For 2 mana, you can get rid of anything. Assassin's Trophy drawback is you give your opponent a land. Well, Rite of Oblivion has the drawback that you're going to have to go down a permanent to do that. That does mean that you can't just play it in any deck. If you're playing whatever Orzhov control, you're probably not going to have a non-land permanent that you want to sacrifice. However, there are decks that are going to be fine with this. We got iTwitch sacrifice style decks where you kind of want iTwitch to die. There's Cauldron Familiars. We're going into a standard with Decay Zombies. There's Lurrus decks that can keep casting things from the graveyard. So in the right deck, I feel like this is a card that on rate is playable outside of standard even. Definitely in standard, as long as you have the sacrifice fodder to support it. And outside of standard, if you have the sacrifice fodder, 2 mana get rid of any non-land permanent, even with the downside of being sorcery, and the huge upside of being able to flash it back later, seems like a pretty playable card. This is something you can throw in your sideboard and get rid of a Ensnaring Bridge, get rid of a Blood Moon, get rid of a creature, a Planeswalker, you name it. Rite of Oblivion doesn't care. So in a deck that can support it, it seems really good. The only reason I'm not hyped for it in Modern is Prismatic Ending's kind of insane and has kind of just taken over this removal role. But even considering that, I could still see a role for Rite of Oblivion, snagging bigger things in some sort of token deck or Lura style deck. So really interesting and potentially powerful new uncommon coming in Innistrad Midnight Hunt. We also got Unnatural Moonrise, 2 mana sorcery. It's a Gruul card. It becomes night. Until end of turn, target creature gets +1/+0, gains trample, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, flash it back for 4. So this is our new Moon Mist, except it only turns day to night. If it's already night, it doesn't do anything. Well, I guess it still gives you the trample effect and the card draw effect. But if you're playing some sort of werewolf style deck, some sort of day-night transform style deck, maybe using the Phoenix we talked about earlier, having a 2-mana card that just makes it night, which is the more powerful side of day-bound, nightbound cards, and essentially all cases, does seem like kind of a big deal. So we'll have to see how it actually shakes out. But if there is a deck that's built around daybound, nightbound, this feels like it does enough to be worth it, especially since you get a cantrip, as long as you can smack your opponent with that creature. We also got Sunrise Cavalier, 3 mana Boros uncommon human knight. You get a 3/3 with trample and haste. If it's not night or day, it becomes day when it comes into play, and when day becomes night or night becomes day, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. Sunrise Cavalier, I don't know how to evaluate this card. We have seen 3/3 haste cards be really good, like Gruul Spellbreaker sees play back to Historic, even a little bit in like Pioneer and Modern, but we've also seen like Hulking Bugbear do basically nothing even in Standard. Is Sunrise Cavalier more of a Gruul Spellbreaker, more of a Hulking Bugbear, somewhere in between? It's certainly better than Hulking Bugbear. Trample is big, it does have potential to grow. I don't think it's as good as Gruul Spellbreaker, but it's still close enough to being good that you need to keep this one in mind for constructed purposes. If only the Circle of Loyalty wasn't rotating, then I'd be super hyped about this card. I mean, Circle of Loyalty with Sunrise Cavalier, be able to play it as a 4/4, that seems absolutely absurd. But alas, Circle of Loyalty, leaving Standard. But still, Sunrise Cavalier seems like a card that could be good enough for constructed, at least in Standard. We also got Fading Hope, which is essentially unsummon with the upside of if you bounce a 3 mana value or less creature, you get to scry 1. So strictly better unsummon, although unsummon isn't really a staple level card. But still, if you're playing unsummon somewhere, play Fading Hope instead. Last but not least, rounded things out with the Draft Chaff. And honestly, these cards aren't that bad. They're just a little bit safe. Morbid Opportunist does let you draw a card whenever a creature dies, except only once per turn. Could have some budget ramifications in Commander, maybe. Dreadhound Phantom Carriage, actually pretty powerful effects, are just so expensive. 6 mana's a little bit too much, even considering you get like a pseudo Blood Artist or a Sir Conrad effect even out of Dreadhound, and Phantom Carriage gets to tutor up a Disturb card or a flashback card for your graveyard. As far as lower rarity transform cards, Hound Tamer, probably going to be really good at limited. We were talking earlier about how the world of Innistrad is built around 2/3s, and you really want 3/3s. Well, Hound Tamer, an uncommon 3/3 that can even turn into a 4/4, and it has trample, and it can even give your other wolves and werewolves trample. Probably not quite good enough for constructed, maybe in a dedicated werewolf deck, but I probably just slightly short in constructed, but really good in limited. And Bereaved Survivor, cool flavor card. And that that, oh my goodness, brings us to the end of our penultimate day of Innistrad Midnight Hunt spoilers. So, good lord, what do you think about all these crazy cards? Let me know in the comments. And again, if you want to keep up on all the latest spoilers in between our daily spoiler videos, make sure to check them out over at mtgpreviews.com. And on that note, I'll be back tomorrow with one more day of main set Innistrad Midnight Hunt spoilers. And then next week we get some new Commander spoilers as well. But I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you all have a spectacular day, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.